Have you ever come across the words of Psalm 1:6, dear reader? They speak with a promise that warms the heart. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Have you ever stopped to think about what it truly means to have your path known by God? Or what the story of someone who discovered this truth amidst the twists and turns of life might look like? Come with me. Let yourself be drawn into a story that may touch your soul and reveal what happens when we choose the path that God never loses sight of. The story of Roberto. At 50 years old, Roberto carried on his shoulders the weight of a life full of hard choices. Sitting on the wooden bench of his porch in a small mountain town, he watched the sunset paint the sky in golden hues. In his hands, an old worn Bible lay open to Psalm 1:6. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. These words, which he had read one sleepless night, felt like a lighthouse shining through the fog of his story. They made him reflect deeply on the paths he had walked and the future he still hoped to build. Roberto had grown up in a humble neighborhood where survival demanded street smarts. The son of hard-working parents, he quickly learned that the world rewarded those who moved faster, even if it meant cutting corners. In his early 20s, he got involved with a group doing small-time smuggling, not enough to make headlines, but enough to gnaw at his conscience. It's just for now, he told himself as he tucked away the money from shady deals. His dream was to give a better life to his mother, Donna Carmen, who spent her days sewing to support the family. But the easy path always has a price. By the time he was 30, Roberto was arrested for his involvement in a delivery gone wrong. The sentence was short, but the shame lingered for years. Donna Carmen, a woman of unshakable faith, never stopped visiting him. "Roberto, God knows your heart," she'd say through tears. "Come back to his path." In prison, Roberto found a Bible left behind by a chaplain volunteer. He read Psalm 1, and verse 6 hit him like thunder. "The Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish." Roberto felt a chill. Was he walking a path that would only lead to destruction? The path of the wicked. After being released, Roberto tried to rebuild his life. He got a job as a helper at a mechanic shop, but the shadow of his past followed him everywhere. Old acquaintances showed up, offering opportunities to get back into crime. "You're good at this, Roberto," one of them said with a sly grin. "Why waste time fixing cars?" The money was tempting, and at 35 the weight of bills and longing for an easier life pressed heavy on him. But the words of Donna Carmen and the psalm echoed, "The way of the wicked will perish." One night, as he repaired an old car, Roberto paused and looked up at the starry sky. "God, I don't want to perish," he whispered. He thought of his childhood friends, some in prison, others lost to the streets, their lives collapsing like houses of cards. The path that once seemed promising led only to ruin. Roberto made a decision. He wouldn't go back. He clung to honest work, even if it paid little. The path of the righteous. At the shop, Roberto met Mr. Antonio, the owner, a 62-year-old man known for his kindness and integrity. Antonio often repaired cars for free when customers couldn't pay and always had words of encouragement. "Honest work builds more than money, Roberto," he'd say. "It builds character." Inspired by Antonio, Roberto started attending the church where Donna Carmen had always been a member. There he found a community that didn't judge him for his past, but embraced him for the man he was striving to become. Reading the Bible became a daily habit. Psalm 1:6 in particular gave Roberto a deep sense of comfort. Knowing that God knows the way of the righteous didn't just mean God saw his actions, it meant God cared, guided, and protected. Roberto realized that being righteous wasn't about being perfect, but about choosing day by day to walk according to God's will, even when it was hard. Each honest choice was a step on a path that God watched over and blessed. By the time he was 40, Roberto faced another trial. Donna Carmen grew ill, and her treatment costs were overwhelming. An old contact offered fast money again, but Roberto knew where that road led. Instead, he turned to his church community. They rallied together, organizing fundraisers to help cover her medical needs. When Donna Carmen heard, even in her weakened state, she smiled. "You're walking the right path, my son," she said, squeezing his hand. She passed away shortly after, but left Roberto with the certainty that his transformation had been worth it. A legacy of faith. At 50, Roberto owned his own small auto shop, having inherited it when Mr. Antonio retired. Following his mentor's example, he became a cornerstone of the community. helping those in need, offering fair prices, and always extending grace. His home, simple but filled with memories of Donna Carmen, was now a place of peace. Roberto also led a support group at church, where men and women, many with troubled pasts, gathered to share their stories and seek new beginnings. One of those was João, a 25-year-old who reminded Roberto of his younger self. João was caught up with the wrong crowd, but wanted to change. Roberto hired him as an apprentice, and one afternoon, while working on an engine, he shared Psalm 1:6. God knows the way of the righteous, João. He sees you trying. Don't give up. Touched, João began attending church and slowly started walking his own new path. Roberto realized his life now carried real weight. It wasn't rich in money, but it was rich in purpose. He often thought of Donna Carmen, of Mr. Antonio, of João, and felt peace knowing his steps, guided by God, were leaving lasting fruit. The path of the wicked, the one he had nearly followed, would have perished. But the path he chose, though imperfect, was honest and known by God. The meaning of Psalm 1:6. Psalm 1:6 closes this powerful psalm with both a promise and a warning. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. It summarizes the contrast between two destinies, the righteous, guided and protected by God, and the wicked whose path leads only to ruin. The Lord knows the way of the righteous. The Hebrew word for knows here means more than just awareness. It signifies deep, intimate knowledge, care, protection, and guidance. God doesn't merely observe the righteous. He walks with them, sustaining their steps. For Roberto, this meant that every honest choice and every refusal to take the easy, dishonest road was seen and valued by God. Being righteous isn't about being without sin. It's about striving to align one's life with God's will and trusting His guidance. The way of the wicked will perish. Those who reject God and live only for themselves follow a path that seems appealing but is ultimately empty. Like the chaff mentioned earlier in the psalm, their lives cannot withstand the tests of time or the judgment of God. Roberto saw this firsthand in friends whose lives ended in ruin, and he knew how easily it could have been his story too. This psalm invites us to reflect. Which path are we walking? Is it a path God knows, blesses, and leads? Or is it a path that, though shiny today, will crumble tomorrow? The promise is clear. Those who choose God walk a path that, though challenging, leads to life. A reflection for the heart. Dear reader, have you ever found yourself at a crossroads, unsure which way to go? Maybe you've walked shortcuts that promised everything but delivered very little. Or perhaps you're struggling to stay on the right path despite the storms around you. Psalm 1:6 is a gentle reminder. God knows every step you take. He sees your battles, your choices, your desire to do what's right, and He promises to guide those who seek His ways. Roberto discovered that the path of the righteous isn't free of pain, but it is upheld by God. He found peace not in riches, but in knowing his steps had purpose. And what about you? Where is your heart today? Maybe it's time to take one more step toward the path that God knows, the one that doesn't perish, but flourishes in His presence. May your life reflect the promise of Psalm 1:6, a path known by God, guided by His hand, and destined to bear fruit that lasts.